Well, I don't know if you remember, but about this time in 2020, we were all running out and buying bread makers and seeing paper products gaining a prominent spot on the commodities market. So, I'd like to say that we're in a better space today. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully that light's not a train. But things are looking a bit better. So, all kidding aside, there are glimpses of some normalcy in some of the building material categories, and I know you guys have had contractor on, so it's really good to go back and listen to them for a little bit more myopic kind of focus on where you're seeing materials and so on and so forth. So I'll talk a little bit more about on the development side and how we kind of integrate in with those contractors and builders and architects.
Welcome to Buzz House, a Baker Tilly podcast where you can find all the buzz around multifamily housing. I'm Don Bernards, the partner in charge of Baker Tilly's multifamily housing practice.
And I'm Garrick Gibson, a partner at Baker Tilly, also specializing in consulting on multifamily housing transactions across the country.
Each week, we'll bring you a guest or a topic in the multifamily housing industry that will help you win now and anticipate tomorrow. Let's get started. Quinn Gormley, the Executive Vice President of Development with the Housing Trust Group. Quinn is joining us today to give us thoughts on what are our challenges in moving affordable housing projects forward in today's environment. Before jumping in with Quinn, we just have a few updates from around the industry. The Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University recently came out with its report entitled America's Rental Housing 2022. The report paints a picture of a dichotomy of two rental housing markets. On one hand, the rental housing market is strong, especially on the high end of the market, and more rental homes are being produced now than in past years. But of course, on the other hand, a large segment of the rental population, especially low income and renters of color, continue to struggle. The pandemic exacerbated housing problems that already existed, and comprehensive housing reform is needed to provide all with affordable, equitable, fair housing options. Also, conclusion are the policies are needed to better the accessibility, sustainability, and resilience to maintain, improve, and grow affordable rental housing. So again, a very comprehensive report by the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University, and we will have a link to that study available on our website. Switching gears, we have mentioned IRS Notice 2022-05 last month. And again, keep in mind, if you were looking to have 2021 be the first tax credit period, again, if you had units that weren't leased at December 2021, you of course have until June of 2022 to lease those units and not have 15-year credits. Remember though that you don't get the benefit of those units leased in 2022 in your 2021 tax credit calculation. Any questions on those, please reach out to Garrick and myself. Just a couple of quick updates, and I think, Garrick, we should probably put a summary together of everything that we've seen the last 4, 5, 6 months on state and local housing tax credits. Again, the last month alone, a bill was introduced in Ohio to create a state and local housing tax credit. There's a recent California bill that will allow state LIHTC to be paired with federal 9% credits. Right now, their state credits only pair with tax-exempt bonds and 4% federal credits. On the other hand, South Carolina is pausing an allocation of their 4% state tax credit after unexpected demand. So just a lot of continued news around state and local housing tax credits, and I think we'll definitely plan to put something together on maybe a summary of everything we've seen in many of the states. With that, we're ready to jump into our discussion with Quinn. I'm going to turn it over to Garrick. Garrick.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for that intro, and thanks for coming on the Buzz House, Quinn. I know we've talked about you being on here before, and I'm glad we finally got you here. So,
thanks, guys. Great to be here.
Thanks. And before we jump in, Quinn, what we typically do is we like our guests to start out by letting our listeners know about your background, who you work for, and what your role is with that company.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Garrick. Yeah. Don, Garrick, you guys are going to age me here. I consider myself lucky as I've worked with some amazing people in this industry and have developed a pretty unique background in community development centered on affordable housing. It's almost a complete evolutionary circle for me here. I went to work in the 90s for an affordable housing developer as a project manager. And since then, I administered LIHTC, CDBG, and home programs for a state agency. That was around the time that Y2K hit, and everybody thought their computers were going to shut down. I've been on the investment side, originating LIHTC investments for one of the oldest syndication firms in the country that first started working the low-income housing tax credit program. I've done LIHTC and new market tax credit lending and construction lending for one of the largest community development banks out there, and assisted one of the largest construction firms, in the top 20 in the nation in assessing risk and investment in affordable housing and HUD developments. So since then, I've worked on transaction advisory side, similar to kind of what you guys do, which is a very important role in helping us kind of get our deals across the board, and that's with a couple accounting firms to build up a knowledge base that I currently have. I currently work with an incredible group of successful developers with our headquarters in Miami, but we're spread across the Southeast, the Midwest, and the Southwest, and we're focused on producing multifamily housing in general. I have a leadership role working among them, but it's really working alongside a great group of folks focused on that affordable workforce housing and growing a luxury market rate apartment brand that I can tell you I'm really fortunate to be here. And thank you guys for having me again.
Yeah, no, we're great to have you. So let's jump in with our questions. So, obviously, as you mentioned, you've been actively developing in various parts of the country. So, given the current state of affairs due to the pandemic, from a developer standpoint, right, how are you approaching the various supply chain issues that a lot of people are currently experiencing? When you're trying to put together a deal, like what kind of metrics are you focusing on?
Yeah, great question. Well, I don't know if you remember, but about this time in 2020, we were all running out and buying bread makers and seeing paper products gaining a prominent spot on the commodities market. So, I'd like to say that we're in a better space today. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully that light's not a train. But things are looking a bit better. So, all kidding aside, there are glimpses of some normalcy in some of the building material categories, and I know you guys have had contractor on, so it's really good to go back and listen to them for a little bit more myopic kind of focus on where you're seeing materials and so on and so forth. So I'll talk a little bit more about on the development side and how we kind of integrate in with those contractors and builders and architects. So I can't stress enough that you need to approach this early, especially today. I mean, we always said that over the years, but you really got to get in early, a little more hands-on in structuring your team, your builder, your designer, and treating all of everybody as partners. You may have waited during what's called the conceptual phase or the initial design development phase to make those selections. Sometimes you bid that work out to find the right architect or find the right contractor, that type of thing. I would stress that you got to go with the relationships and really kind of get folks in early, have them start working with you, and get an idea of what costs are looking like and what escalation is going to look like down the road. I mean, right now you're looking at a 1% escalation on costs on a month-to-month basis right now, we think, for this year. So, that means that if you got a schedule of values from a contractor in a design conceptual phase now, you're going to be, and you're planning on closing 6 months from now, it's probably going to be about a 6% escalation on that number down the road. So really kind of get in and kind of understand what that escalation is going to look like, so you don't get caught flat-footed as you're pushing to closing and realizing you need more equity, or you're going to need to defer more developer fee, that type of thing. So, and regardless of funding type, all these deals have a loan to value, and all these deals have an equity need. Just in some cases, we generate equity from the sale of credits, or we're putting our own equity in for some rate of return, that type of deal. So you want to get in early, and that way you're not having to come to the table with more equity too, if deferring developer fee is not an option. So as far as metrics go, I'm going to keep it kind of high level to that 4 metrics that really is really important to take a look at. Number one, roofing materials. They trended pretty dramatically over the last 12 months. The lead time for such products is expected to trend down over the next 6 to 12 months. But I would also say that, with a caveat that engineered joists, the big boards that you use to do structural wood, those probably will have a little bit longer lead time. So getting in early and understanding what that order looks like is going to be key. The second would be, again, wood-based materials. This would be the framing stuff. That's been up and down. I mean, everybody's been watching that, glued to the TV. But I think that'll stabilize over the next 6 to 12 months. And these are all information coming out ENR, Engineering News Report. So, this is what builders kind of pay close attention to. So this isn't Quinn just shooting from the hip saying I think things crystal ball wise are going to level off. Architectural items, drywall, metal products, flooring, paint, that type of thing. I think they're going to start trending down as things start to normalize a little bit. And that leads me to the last fourth thing, and that's mechanical products, HVAC, monitoring system, elevators, appliances. Right now you can't go buy a truck, right? Can't buy a car because there's no chips. Same is very true in this space. The scarcity of those chips have really driven costs and supply up. So, you're going to want to get up there. And I think largely, one of the things we're doing, and maybe we'll get to this in a minute, but, getting ahead and buying that stuff early and storing it on site. I think the last deal we had, I wish I could show you pictures. I think our physical site looked like a shipping container ship that parked in, LA port, right? So we had so many shipping containers, and that increased security and so on and so forth. But getting ahead of it is what's key.
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, and thanks for that insight, Quinn. I have noticed that in some developments I've driven by. So touching on, specifically that was a great sort of summary of all the supply chain kind of issues are going. But what about vendors, right? I mean, I know we've seen some of this issue affecting the projects we're working on. So are you doing anything different with respect to like vendor selection or planning for the various type of labor issues that we're facing? Maybe just like some type of example you can provide surrounding this?
Yeah, so labor is a common issue. I mean, we're seeing it across every space in our economy. It's driving inflation, that type of stuff. So, one of the things that's kind of interesting is, architects have lost team members, and the builders are seeing high demand on skilled labor. And we're seeing like other builders walk on site and poach labor, skilled labor. So you're seeing that shifting take place. So it's really important to kind of pay attention to labor. So when it comes to construction, keep in mind that the subcontractors, the actual skilled labor, they're not the same as the commercial guys, the guys that go and build commercial buildings. It's a smaller pool of folks that specialize in multifamily that you pay attention to. As far as architects go, we lost an architectural team due to the pandemic in the middle. So I would say one of the things that you got to pay close attention to is how your contracts are structured. Make sure your contracts name the key personnel that you need, and then you want approval of any personnel changes. And then be prepared to have the hard conversations if there's a gap in knowledge or expertise, and discuss how that'll be addressed. Get in there early. Don't let that fester. Have those conversations and give yourself the room within your contractual base that give you the ability to make adjustments.
Well, Quinn, that was really good. Really haven't thought a lot about it. Every focus has been so much on materials and things like that, but just even the Great Migration or this or job share, those are really kind of really interesting points. Quinn, switching maybe to the other hand, maybe more to the sources, and maybe this is more just a question in a feel. It's what is that? I know there's no magic bullet, right? Costs are rising, interest rates may be on the verge of rising. We'll see. It's probably maybe it's too simple of a question, but what do we need more of on the sources side? It's everything is being stretched, and is it hey, we need more low cost debt products? Is it hey, we do you have thoughts, or what how, again, not sharing proprietary information, but what do you think we need more of out there?
Well, for this podcast, you probably need a little bit longer time so we can kind of get
Right.
into it. But
Yeah.
honestly, I'm definitely not in the camp right now of the folks we're around going interest rates are going to
Yeah.
oh my God, we're looking at a 2%,
Yeah.
10-year treasury right now. I'll
Yeah.
remember 2015, 2017, we were 2.25, 240 in interest rates. Spreads tightened with those
Yeah.
lenders. So that's key. But I mean, we're still looking at 460 all-in rates, those type of areas. So it really comes down probably to the core of your question is building efficiency, and making sure that your building is efficient. One of the things that we talked about, like maybe a proprietary, it's not. I just don't think we use enough of it. I think we need to be looking at modular, prefabricated type
Sure.
constructions and maybe
Sure.
leaning into that direction.
Yeah.
It's a matter of getting state agencies and investors comfortable with the design standards that are
Yeah.
there. But they do it in California right now. I mean, you're seeing that when you have Davis Bacon or prevailing wage issues or union level issues that affect wages out there. So you see a lot of people do prefab all out of the state and kind of ship in kind of deal, which definitely helps preserve the cost and deliver the affordability that you need in the project. I think we're going to see more of that. I mean, you've seen recent articles about where rents are trending. I mean, just today, like they came out with where rents are across the country, and it's pretty amazing when you see that. But we need to become more efficient on what we're building.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, Quinn. Quinn, just kind of one last question. You kind of alluded a little bit to this. Just I think a lot of people are looking at what can state housing finance agencies do. To your point, you already said, hey, we need to look at design, look at modular and things. I know there's some state agencies that are and today are, forward allocating credits to fill gaps. There's all kinds of discussions about efficient, energy efficiency. Is there any, thing that you think, housing finance agencies, what should we be thinking about in the next 12 months or so? Like
Yeah.
key.
Yeah, again, as I mentioned a second ago, getting an agency to think outside the box and maybe amending its design standards is going to be key, maybe to open it up a little bit more and be a little more receptive. I think the other thing, I mean, you mentioned earlier in the podcast about states with state credits. That's a huge help. I mean, especially in states that don't have large allocations of soft money that are out there, have not developed those level of soft money banks. So that's definitely key. And then, how are we going to address, bringing more credits into projects? I mean, every state has, we're trying to spread as much credit across as many projects as possible. And I like that as a developer, going in a competitive round, that there's a lot of potential out there, but we've not amended the amount of credits you get for a project in a long time, right? That hasn't kept up with the market, right? So when we're seeing construction costs increase by 26%, between a couple months, and you're limiting 2 million in credits, your options are reduce the number of units you're planning on building, but you don't offset the cost of the land, right? So your land is X, right? So there's a lot of pressure in different directions. So getting an agency to really understand that, I think, is going to be key.
I think you touched on pretty much everything that we wanted to cover on this podcast, and we really appreciate having you on, Quinn.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's always good to join you guys, and look forward to hearing more of your podcasts. And I really like I can tell the music to our ears. We'll be digging in with you guys about this new guidance that came out from the IRS. We don't have to face 15-year credits. That's a pretty important thing for us right now. So
exactly. Great. Thanks, Quinn, and thanks, listeners, for tuning in today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to Buzz House. To receive a notification when new episodes are available, please subscribe to Buzz House, a Baker Tilly podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. For additional resources around multifamily housing, check out bakertilly.com. And if you have a suggested topic, please send them to build@bakertilly.com. That's BUILD @bakertilly.com.